To understanding the fundamentals of that kernel and its exploitation involve that delving into the core of an operating system and its vulnerabilities. So we can back break down into the three parts: that kernel basics, kernel exploitations, and kernel techniques. So in kernel basics, the kernel is the central components of an operating system that manage system resources and provides an interfaces for software to interact with the hardware. And basically it handles that tasks such as that process scheduling, that memory management, device input output, and the system calls. And the kernel operates in privileged mode, allowing it to access hardware directly and enforce security policies. The second one is for that kernel exploitation. So kernel exploitation involved that finding and exploiting vulnerabilities within the kernel to gain unauthorized access or control over the system. So common kernel that vulnerabilities including that buffer overflow, use after free, race conditions, and integers overflow. Exploiting the kernel often requires a deep understanding of operating system, internals, memory management, and processor architecture. If I'm talking about the techniques, so kernel exploitations techniques vary depending on the vulnerabilities and the target system. Some common techniques include like stack smashing, where overwriting function return address on the kernel stacks to redirect execution flow. That kernel heap exploitations, where we are doing that manipulating kernel heap data structure to trigger memory corruption. That kernel module vulnerabilities, where we trying to exploiting vulnerabilities kernel modules on drivers loaded into that kernel. And we can see that time of check of time of use, or we can see that TOCTOU, which is like TOCTOU, which is like the race conditions. So it's exploiting a race condition between the time a resource is checked and the time it is that used by the kernel. And use of the that kernel primitives, so basically in that leveraging existing kernel functionalities that such as that system calls or kernel API or achieve exploitations.